Welcome to Working Smarter, Concise Compliance Conversations featuring Wendy Rubis, sponsored by Village MD, primary care physicians, practice medicine the way you've always wanted, data, resources, and clinical decision support to care for your patients inside and outside the exam room.
Hi, welcome to Working Smarter. I'm Wendy Rubis, General Counsel at Village MD. It's good to be back. We hope all of our Smarties out there are staying safe and doing well during this challenging time. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the many legal changes that are going on as a result of COVID-19. And to do that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Her name is Megan Harkins. Megan is responsible to keep up with all of the changes in law as a result of COVID. Megan, how are you?
Hey, Wendy, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of very busy time here in the legal department.
There's so many changes. I think we counted 670 pronouncements just at the federal level.
It's almost like it's raining laws.
First time in history, gonna start raining rain. It's raining rain. Hallelujah, it's raining rain. Amen.
With all of this rain, Megan, we're really trying to just stay focused and keep everybody informed. I mean, I think there's so many different changes from CMS alone that they're now putting out infographics, which is kind of funny. But the goal for today is really just to focus on those primary areas that affect primary care. And so we're going to cover each one of these briefly. If you need help with these, give us a shout. We've got tools and resources. We'll put some of them in show notes, but we're going to cover each one of these key areas just a little bit. So, Megan, starting with first things first, give us just an overview of what cash relief, and I think most of our providers know this by now, but what's the cash relief available?
Yeah, great question, Wendy. Especially initially, there was a ton of push demonstrating that, yeah, hey, we're supporting, we being the government, small businesses and physician practices. And so, as you see here, there's a number of opportunities, some of which are probably more advantageous because it doesn't require you to pay anything back. Some are formed more as a loan. So what's going to work for each practice is going to likely be very different, but we have, distilled the most relevant pieces of each of these cash relief options, and hopefully if anyone ever needs any assistance, that's something that we're also ready to help practices sift through what might work best for their own business.
Yeah, so we did a couple webinars. We've got other guides and summaries and experts and things. If anybody has questions about the cash relief available, just feel free to reach out and give us a call. The second big area that applies to our listeners, really every industry, is the myriad of rules that relate to the workforce. There's many different sources of these laws. There's OSHA, there's FMLA, there's ADA, and many more. And so we've been providing guidance about really how do you manage your workforce when people are sick, when they're afraid to work, how do you manage return to work. And I think the main message here is that there's a fair amount of unknown here. Lawsuits across the country, some of the guidance that's come out may not actually hold up as appropriate. So I think good judgment prevails. Is that sort of what you're advising people, Megan?
Yeah, Wendy, I think that's a great point. We're all people here trying to navigate some really uncharted and unfamiliar waters. And so, being reasonable, trying to be as consistent as possible. Obviously, there are going to be times in which you're going to need to deviate just based on the level of guidance that is coming out week after week. And I think all of us, even as an employee, need to understand employers have a tough time and offer some grace that we're all kind of in this together and we're going to try to do right by one another.
Very helpful. And again, if you're listening to this we have a guide, an FAQ, and things we can make available. One of the things about a crisis, Megan, is that in some ways it allows you to get hyper focused, and so a number of these pronouncements, it's eliminated, extraneous requirements and allowing people to just really focus on what's important. What are some of the highlights there, and what are your thoughts on that area?
So there is a lot. There's been a lot of reduction in reporting requirements. We've seen audits be suspended so that providers and their practices can focus on doing what they do best, and that's serving the patients and making sure that their patients are kept healthy in this trying time. Another way in which they've been trying to focus providers' efforts on offering those services is by expanding telemedicine, telehealth. Recently, they've even gone as far as permitting billing for audio only telehealth. Certainly, our preference is always to try to do that audio visual type visit, but we also understand that some of our patients may not be as tech savvy or may not even have access to video technologies. And so I think this is a great way in which providers can still connect with their patients where they're at.
Yes, yes. And we've got a wide variety of materials available on telehealth. I know Dr. Clive did a webinar on that, and we've also got some materials and resources available. Feel free to let us know if you'd like to see those. So, Megan, another area that we're seeing movement is with regard to scope of practice. And obviously, in the acute setting, there's a concern about a shortage of workforce, but this actually does bleed over and affect us in the primary care clinic setting. What are you seeing in terms of scope of practice and physician supervision flexibility?
So this is one part that I think most folks are really excited about, and you know, reducing any sort of requirements that may inhibit a practitioner from practicing at the top of their license. And I think this is also just a way to expand our provider workforce and allow them to be available for the patients that need them the most.
So I think, the message is that, always, and we don't need to tell our providers this, good judgment is first and foremost here. But there is some new flexibility to allow case managers to do phone calls, or, to allow, to lessen some of the supervision requirements. And the other thing is happening is working across state lines. Almost every state has loosened the need to apply for a full license. The way states are handling it, it's different in every state. Some states are eliminating any requirements. Some states require notice. Some states have an expedited licensure filing. So it's all over the board. But bottom line is lots of licensure and scope of practice movement here during this time. The other area that we're seeing a number of changes will start to get a lot more important, which has to do with what do you do to test, treat, and diagnose COVID-19.
Just add there, I think the guidance is changing week to week, like most other things. And what was previously touted as being a suitable method of treating for COVID, may no longer be suitable, may actually be dangerous. So we know that our providers are always on top of best ways in which to mitigate, manage COVID related symptoms. And I think too, there's a lot of questions that have come up around, testing, how frequently should you test? And it is, sort of a gray area, but certainly as we learn more, we'll make sure that we pass along that information to both our employed and partnering providers.
The main point with treating COVID, the key message is that for the most part, testing it is going to be covered. And there's limitations on even making co-payments and charges and things. So, Megan, now that we're looking at returning to work, we're going to be going through all of these 600 or whatever number again and adjusting things and tinkering with them to adjust to returning to work.
We're channeling our inner Gary Jacobs and doing our sun salutation.
Yes, here comes the sun. Thank goodness. We're all so relieved to hear about that. But the point is that this is going to be a number of tweaking and adjusting and calibrating many of these guidelines as we go back into reopening. And we're here working on this with you. As we evolve, we'll be working on this. Feel free to reach out and we'll help you. Bottom line, as always, it's a good time to be with Village MD.
Thank you to our sponsor, Village MD. We hope you will join us for future concise compliance conversations.